Today we're going to be talking about section 2.3, which is on rate of change and slope. Now, rate of change is essentially just the ratio comparing the change of one quantity to another. In math, we mostly think of it as this way: change in y over change in x. And it can sometimes be written as delta y over delta x. Now, that most of the time is going to be seen in science classes, but sometimes it shows up in math. Now, here we have an example that shows the change in temperature over some amount of time for some solution. Now, if you think of time as my independent variable, or x, and my temperature as my dependent variable, y, these are essentially just a bunch of points. Okay? These are just a bunch of points. Now, I like to take the first and last point because I think it gives me a good representation of my rate of change over the entire period of time we're looking. So if that's the case, I have 2 points. I have 0, 143.6, and I have the point 12, 118.4. Now, if I'm looking at the rate of change, I'm going to see where my temperature ends and where it started. So my change in y, I'll write it like this, okay, over change in x is going to be this: 118.4 minus 143.6, okay, where it ended, where it began, all over 12 minus 0. And I just go to my calculator and I see that that is negative 25.2 over, and then 12 minus 0 is 12. Now, we probably want to figure out what this is on its own. So we take negative 25.2 and divide it by 12. And we find that the rate of change is going to be delta y over delta x is going to be negative 2.1, which means for every minute, my temperature is going down 2.1 degrees. Here's a guided practice problem. Find the rate of change between the 2 points shown. Now, example 2 says we have this graph right here. And it says to find the average rate of change of the percent of total music sales for both CDs and downloads from 2001 to 2008 and compare the rates. So essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at the beginning and the end. And we don't really worry about the middle. We just find the rate of change between the beginning and the end. So let's look at first CD. Okay? So if I think of these points as 189.2, and this point over here then would be 877.8. Okay? So to find the rate of change then, we say where sales ended, 77.8%, minus where it began, 89.2%, all over 8 minus 1. Okay? So I go to my calculator, and I'd say negative 11.4% over 7 years, which if we divide that out, is essentially a decrease of 1.6% every year. That's an average change. Now, if we're going to look at downloads, okay, now our point is going to be 0.2 to 8, 12.8. Okay, so over here I'll do downloads. .8 minus 0.2 all over 8 minus 1. That's 12.6 over 7, which is an increase of 1.8% each year. So average increase is 1.8% each year. So you can see, you compare these two, that CD sales went down 1.6% every year on average, and downloads went up 1.8% each year. Okay? So the slope of a line is a ratio comparing the y corresponding to the x. And most of the time when we have 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, we use this equation right here for slope. Remember, slope is denoted as m, and so we'd say m is simply y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So slope of a line is really the ratio comparing the change in y over the change in x. So it says find the slope of a line that passes through negative 4, 3, and 2, 5. So we go back to our equation for slope, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I simply fill in where I can. Well, if this is my first point, that's my x1, y1. And here's my second point, x2, y2. And I just substitute in the numbers that work. So 5 minus 3 over 2 minus a negative 4. 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 minus a negative is like adding. So 2 plus 4 is 6. So 1/3. So the slope of my line is a rise in 1, run it of 3. Here's 2 you can find the slope of now. Now we can also find the slope of a line by finding 2 points on my graph and finding the slope in between them. So I'm going to pick 2 points that I see work really nice on my graph. So I go over here and I see this one. It's real nice. I'll pick a different color so it's easier to see. Okay, and then there's another one right there. Now I can pick any 2 points on my line. You'll get the same slope depending on what points you pick. So this is going to be negative 4, 3. And right here is going to be negative 2, 0. So my 2 points are negative 4, 3 and negative 2, 0. And I can find the slope in between them. Slope is simply just y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now here's something that people get kind of confused with. They say, well, which one is x1 and which one is x2? Okay? The way I always do it is I always say I look at it like I'm reading a book. I go from left to right. So my leftmost point is right here. So that's my x1, y1. And then over here is my farthest point to the right. So that's my x2, y2. It's like I'm reading a book. Okay? And so I plug in my numbers accordingly. And I'll get 0 minus 3 over negative 2 minus a negative 4. Okay? So I find the slope in between them. I get negative 3 on top. And I get 2 on bottom. So the slope of my line is negative 3 over 2. Here's 2 more guided practice problems that you can try on your own.